And here's to you, my ramblin' boy, may all your ramblin' bring you joy.
Pete Seeger tells a story of passing through a small village near Calcutta, India. A villager wanted to connect with him but spoke no English, so the villager did what seemed like the next best thing. He sang Pete a song by Tom Paxton in Bengali. Connection made. Folk songs are measured differently than pop tunes, less by how big the hit than by how many people sing it, less by the money than the mileage. So if you're an American folk songwriter and a Bengali villager thinks your songs are a universal musical language, brother, you have arrived. As Nancy Griffith says, I think we are all born singing Tom Paxton songs. Other songwriters who emerged from the 60s folk revival became more famous, sold more records, but you have to go back to Paxton's hero Woody Guthrie to find any American folk songwriter who lived to see more of his songs enter the bloodstream of the world's musical culture. Plenty of big stars have recorded his songs: Peter, Paul and Mary and the Pogues, Joan Baez and Neil Diamond, Bob Dylan and Mel Torme, the Weavers and Willie Nelson, even Placido Domingo and Tiny Tim. But far more important, Paxton's best songs, Ramblin' Boy, Last Thing on My Mind, Bottle of Wine, I Can't Help But Wonder Where I'm Bound, are sung by millions of people all over this world, most of whom have no idea that he wrote them. They sing them not because they are Tom Paxton songs, but because they are the songs of their own childhoods, their own families, their own communities.
It's a long and dusty road, a hot and a heavy load. The folks I meet ain't always kind. Some are bad and some are good. Some have done the best they could. Some have tried to ease my trouble.
It is difficult to measure Tom Paxton's real importance to American music because he is not one but at least three of the most influential songwriters of his time. In an era when artful obscurity and sullen self-possession were all the rage, his plain-spoken, deeply felt, and tender odes to lasting love have remained standards for nearly a half-century. Any who have met Midge, his wife of 42 years, know how honestly he comes by this, and fully understand why he is incapable of writing about love as anything but a blessing and a wonder. Many would count Paxton the most effective political songwriter of the 60s. Where others screamed and scolded, he used smart humor, a journalist's honest eye, and a patriot's simple understanding of right and wrong to pen ballads that could truly change people's minds. He also played a crucial role in the family music movement. He wrote The Marvelous Toy and Goin' to the Zoo in the early 60s, and his classic 70s and 80s children's recordings helped set a new standard of quality and sophistication.
It went zip when it moved and bop when it stopped and whirr when it stood still. I never knew just what it was, and I guess I never will.
Tom Paxton was born in Chicago in 1937, but spent most of his boyhood in Oklahoma. In 1960, the United States Army made a significant and thoroughly unintentional contribution to the folk revival by assigning reservist Thomas Paxton to duty in New Rochelle, New York. He spent every free moment in Greenwich Village, and by the time Bob Dylan, Phil Ochs, and Eric Anderson showed up there, he was already an established headliner. Almost immediately, he displayed a gift for writing songs that felt familiar on first listen. He wrote I Can't Help But Wonder Where I'm Bound in 1962, so early in his career that when people say they learned how to fingerpick to that song, he startles them by saying, "So did I." In 1964, Elektra Records signed him, and he remained a major songwriting star until the folk revival began to wane in the early 70s. His next years were his least visible, unless you knew where to look. Unlike many of his fellow 60s folk stars, he did not follow after the last vapor trails of the mainstream. Instead, he aligned himself firmly, proudly, and loudly with the slowly percolating subculture that was transforming folk into the fiercely independent, resilient community music it is today. He is not heralded much for this, but his presence in the folk world during those lean years lent a vital legitimacy to a movement struggling to be heard and taken seriously. When his old fans followed him, he led them not to nostalgic oldies shows, but to this vibrant new folk scene. And any who saw him perform in those years know how quick he was to sing the praises of the next generation of folk singers.
And here's to you, my ramblin' boy, may all your ramblin' bring you joy. Here's to you, my ramblin' boy, may all your ramblin' bring you joy.
Today, more than ever before, Tom Paxton is like the music he has done so much to popularize, preserve, and pass along. His songs are ageless, his presence on the folk scene like some gentle force of nature, simultaneously coaxing the music forward and reminding us of its fabled past. If it is possible to have a genius for simple human kindness, count this humble, profoundly decent man among the greatest. For, even more than his pungent wit, his eloquent populist rage, or his deeply felt belief in lasting love, this kindness is the core of Tom Paxton's music. The reason his songs are sung by people who have never heard his name and will be sung by the children of children of children who have not yet been born. Like all the great poets, Tom sees us just as we are, but like only the most precious of them, God bless him, he likes us anyway.
He was a man and a friend always. He stuck with me in the hard old days. He never cared if I had no dough. We rambled round in the rain and snow. And here's to you, my rambling boy.